meetings much more interesting in terms of understanding the issue and catering to other thought process. It's very important that all of you come forward, take part in the discussion. So yes, on that note, I hope that as we kickstart the day 2 of our conference, we shall be having participative audience. Yes or no? That's like it. So if you really think that we're going to be a participative audience, so let's get up. Let's get into the warm-up mode. May I request everyone to please put your 2 hands up in the air from this side, from that side, everyone. Just 2 hands up in the air. And now with the hands up in the air, hands stretch. Stretch. A big smile and a big round of applause. Come on. Thank you. This is just a quick warm-up so that we gear up for our day 2. Once again, welcome back. And taking on from what we discussed yesterday, go ahead. Once again, it is indeed my pleasure to request Mr. Ken D'Souza to join up on the stage. Our first speaker for today, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ken D'Souza, metallurgical engineer and corrosion specialist with over 4 decades of experience in the steel industry in Canada and United Kingdom, professional engineer by profession, and has developed business plans for manufacture of several new metallic coated and pre-painted steels and provided engineering analysis, designs and testing support to customer for all their existing and new products. Once again, Mr. D'Souza, good morning. Welcome. And we look forward to an interesting perspective from your side about galvanizing in automobiles, looking into the Indian scenario. Once again, let's give Mr. D'Souza a big round of applause. Moving ahead to talk about how can coated steel in automotive industry and what are its implications, what can be the advantages of it. For the same, we are delighted to have amongst us Mr. Avtar Singh. Mr. Avtar Singh, a very good morning. And yes, Mr. Singh, a metallurgical engineer with over 21 years of experience. That's a big one in the steel industry. He's worked in manufacturing quality assurance, technology services, technology group. Currently working as the head of customer technological services with the Tata Steel and having over 12 years of experience in dealing with automotive industry for coated products. Mr. Singh, welcome back here and pleasure for us to have you here. Once again, a big round of applause for Mr. Singh. And yes, as we go ahead, today we'll be hearing a presentation on the galvanized auto body, its current status and future potential. And we're delighted that we have somebody from one of India's most premier automobile organization. Here we have Maruti Suzuki. So we're delighted that we have Mr. Deepak Thukral amongst us, who has over 24 years of rich experience in the automobile sector in areas of vendor development, incoming quality and supply chain. He started his career with Tata Steel and then moved to Maruti Suzuki, where he has spent most of the years. Ladies and gentlemen, in his current capacity, he is responsible for incoming supply chain activities, including procurement of local components, development of new components from the local and foreign suppliers. Good morning, Mr. Thukral. Pleasure for us to have you here. Once again, a big round of applause to welcome Mr. Thukral. And yes, moving on, we are delighted that we have amongst us to talk about the best material to give us an insight on that in relation to galvanizing in automobiles, Dr. Frank Goodwin. Dr. Goodwin, who is the Director of Technology and Market Development at International Zinc Association and is based at Durham. Once again, good morning, sir. Pleasure for us to have you here. Big round of applause for Dr. Goodwin, who is also the author of several US and foreign patents and over 300 technical publications and contributions to books. Once again, welcome. And moving ahead, I now take the privilege of requesting the chair for our first thematic session for galvanizing in automobiles. We are delighted that we have amongst us Mr. Rajesh Mahata, CMO Hindustan Zinc, who comes with over 22 years of experience in cement, petrochemicals, petroleum and metal industry. Please, sir, come forward. A big round of applause for Mr. Rajesh as he joins up. So yes, on that note, as we begin with our day 2, once again hoping that we'll be having participative audience, we all will be learning and enriching our knowledge from the esteemed panel of speakers present with us for our first session. I request the chair, Mr. Rajesh, to take it on from here and initiate the first session. Over to Mr. Rajesh. Mr. Rajesh, please.
Good morning, everybody. And it is very pleasant morning today when I see lot many people here after last day's hectic schedule where we had a lot of entertainment program in the evening, and before that we were having a very good interaction on the various subjects on the galvanizing sector. Today morning we are starting with the automobile sector as it has been said, and I have a very distinguished panel with me, and I am hopeful that we will be having a very good interactive session between us. Now I will request Mr. Ken D'Souza to start with his presentation. Thank you.
Chairman, and I must say that I learned something very important, very fundamental last night, and that's Indian engineers are better dancers than North American engineers. I really do. Excellent entertainment. So my presentation today is going to be around what is the status of the use of galvanized steel in Indian-made automobiles. And really the purpose is for me to set the stage for these eloquent speakers that are to follow, that to address, the huge potential we see for galvanized steel, certainly in Indian-made automobiles. So that's really the purpose. And to support that, I have my own, opinions on this, so I'll share those with you. So we've talked about, and Steve has mentioned this, zinc is really the great protector, and it's been used for decades in Europe and North America for body panels, underbody panels, and a variety of other automobile parts. India started using galvanized and galvanneal for body panels, but only for export models, and I'll have a little bit more to say about that later. The good thing is, and I think everybody in this room is convinced, that zinc sacrifices itself very effectively to protect the strength and the safety of steel in the auto body in white. And the key to this is that the dissolution rate of zinc is slow, because we don't want something that sacrifices itself too quickly. It's slow, but yet effective to protect the steel auto body for at least 10 years, and much, much longer in other less aggressive environments like construction and infrastructure applications. So this is a little bit out of date, but you can see the growth in production in India was exceeding 25% between 2007-8 and 2012. And while it has slowed down, last year's production, I believe, of passenger cars was 3.3 million units. So the trend has slowed, but it has continued to increase. And so that's all a good sign. Now, the projection is that production capacity will really start to accelerate given the new government climate for investment and foreign investment and that sort of thing. I just wanted to set the stage here to sort of see how big is the carrot here for local supplies to the auto industry. So if I could just take you through this calculation, let's assume that there's 400 kilos of steel, of galvanized galvanneal steel per vehicle. That number was confirmed by several automakers in India that we visited. So, and let's assume also that skin panels account for 40%, and it's typically 0.7 millimeter type thickness, steel thickness. I assumed inner panels would be about 50%, a little heavier thickness, and then the underbody structurals, 10% by weight, and a little heavier yet in terms of thickness. Assumed that the engineering scrap, what we call offal, is about 25%, and these are conservative numbers. Normally we engineered scrap is around 30%, but to be conservative, I used 25%. Let's also assume that as an ex-steelmaker, I know that we cannot afford to be undercoating, otherwise we reject the coil. So typically 10% overcoating is not unusual. So the 50 grams, total 100 grams, total both sides, could be 110, or between 110 and 120. And then also assuming that 3.3 million units are made. When you run through this calculation, the zinc content in 400 kilograms of the coated steel is about 10.6 kilos per vehicle. This translates into 1.3 million tons of galvanized steel. So you can see no steel maker will turn down anything like that as an opportunity. So we talked about this a little bit yesterday, And again, my data is a little out of date, but if you look at that the third segment, coated steel production, because that's really what we're trying to do here, is to move coated steel into the automobile. Last year's production was 6.99 million tons. So again, steel mills are gearing up to increase the value-added product line that Galvanize provides. And even with those kind of numbers, the percentage of coated steel that's used is still only about half of what it is typically in North America and Europe. So it's something that really reinforces the need for all of us to work collectively to improve that. So the good news is that we've got a huge market potential. Capacity up until the last couple of years was growing at 25%. Exports, which is a huge opportunity in India, is 35% and likely to grow. And here's something that I don't know how many of you have realized this, but India is expected to become a global center for all car makers for the design and sort of production of small cars, so subcompact cars. Just like Europe is for the mid-size and North America is for the large size, from a design and pre-production, India is likely to become the hub for small cars or subcompact cars. And then the other piece of good news is that the BIS, the Bureau of Indian Standards, has developed a specification specifically for automotive, and that's nearing completion. The bad news, of course, is here's the big opportunity, but we don't have the quality requirements or the quantity requirements for skin panel supply. So it's not locally available, so it's imported. The supply base is limited, and for me, it's a concern because you don't want to build a market and then not be able to supply it. So the steel industry really has to invest in either new CGLs or adapt CGLs to make this new generation of advanced high-strength coated steels that I talked about yesterday. And here's the real bad news as far as I'm concerned. Indian car buyers of domestic-made vehicles are receiving less durable vehicles than those exported or foreign vehicles sold here. So it's really a shame that we have to put up with this, that we have to drive inferior products than those that are same plants used for export. And it'll be in your proceedings for the thing. This shows where the Indian galvanizing lines are. And if I can take you to the extreme right-hand side, you'll see that typically there's only three. There's POSCO, Tata's, and JSW, the only three plants that are likely to be capable of making and supplying the exposed skin panel business for automobiles. So we need them to really step up big time and supply. Here's I know it's tough to read, but again, you can see it at your leisure. What I did when I first took on this project was to visit all the car companies, and I've shown here what it is in India and what it is in Europe. So this is the coated steel material selected for Indian-made vehicles for export. And you can see galvanized and galvanneal are the main, really galvanneal and blue is the main product that's used. And there's only 3 companies that are into straight zinc. So again, skin panels, inner panels, and underbody structurals. So what's the carrot here? And if projections are right, if calculations are right, if business investment, especially foreign investment, comes here, then the business is really 1 million tons of exposed skin panels for galvanized and galvanneal. And this is the sort of the demand you're going to expect, the orders that you can expect from Indian auto manufacturers, and that's huge. An additional 1.3 million tons of coated steel would be required for unexposed and other structural components, both produced in-house and those brought in by Tier 2 suppliers. And then, of course, the good news, as far as any business is concerned, is the imports will be displaced, and so that's a good thing. So in conclusion, I just want to say that India is really poised to become a major global hub for the design and production of small subcompact cars. You know, the design community is well known, well respected, certainly in North America and Europe. And India, I have no doubt, will be announced hopefully very soon. The current lack of exposed quality galvanized and galvanneal steels, unfortunately, is limiting our conversion to coated steels, and I'd be interested to see how the other speakers address this. However, Indian-made vehicles built for export are being made with extensive amounts of zinc-coated steel, so a lot of it is imported for the outer body panels, domestic supply for the inners and underbody parts, but this is good news, and that's the way it should be for even domestically sold vehicles. But unfortunately, until things change, the quality and durability of our Indian-made vehicles sold domestically, to people like us in this room, it is inferior. There's no other way to say that. And that really is a shame and needs to change. So with that, I'm going to say thank you and turn the podium over to our chair.
How the galvanizing industry is going to take this challenge is what we have to deliberate here. And for that, I will request my colleague, Mr. Singh, from Tata Steel to give a presentation on how the galvanizing industry is looking to this challenge.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Avatar Singh, and I've been very fortunate to be working with the Indian automotive industry now for last about 15 years, and specifically for coated products, I think about 11 to 12 years, with all the automakers in India. You know, in 1997, when Tata Steel thought of putting up an automotive galvanizing line, people thought that we were crazy, and we were just throwing away some 200-300 crores of rupees. And but yes, at that particular point of time, the managing director was Mr. J.J. Irani, and he had said that, look, India needs coated steels for automotive as well as for structurals, and he was very clear that we wanted to put up that particular galvanizing line. And we did put up that galvanizing line in 2001, and now till about 2004, we really did not have any orders. There was only one car maker called Proton in Malaysia, and we used to supply to them. But after that, we have seen that yes, there has been demand created at least for the export units. Coming to the presentation part, this is how I'm going to talk to you about a little bit of an introduction. This being the second day, not so much of an introduction really required on why zinc should be used or why galvanized material should be used. So let me just begin with, of course, men will be men, so we love our cars. And what happens, you know, as soon as you go and buy a car in India, वो अभी showroom से निकला भी नहीं है car, उसके पहले somebody comes up to say, hey look, I have this beautiful glass coating. Why don't you put a glass coating on your car? Another fellow runs in, I have a superior Teflon coating. Why don't you put a Teflon coating on the car? So now the first time buyer is saying that he's put enough money or maybe taken a loan. He says that what is this thing? So then it is explained. And typically a photograph of something like this will be shown to him. And he's saying that, look, this is what happened to your car. Please put Teflon coating, rupees 4,000 only. Put some glass coating, rupees 5,000 only. And the person is so scared that he's put a lot of life savings into buying a car. He says, yes, kar lijiye. Look at this situation. As automotive galvanizing suppliers, we are saying that the difference between using cold rolled and galvanized is maybe only 6,000 rupees. The consumer or the customer is already paying 8,000 to 9,000 rupees. And still, he has to, every 3 years, if you are in the coastal areas of India, every 3 years, people who live in Mumbai, Chennai, they will know, every 3 years, that Teflon coating wears out and you get another Teflon coating. But I think the only reason why coated steels is not being used, apart from the availability part of it, is because there is not enough awareness. You ask an Indian consumer only, 5,000 rupees, I'll give you, let's say, a music system, and I'll give you a coated steel. He will immediately say, give me a music system. I know now. So let me get on with my presentation. Why hot dip galvanizing? Of course, it has been deliberated enough that the prevention of red rust, both for aesthetic purposes as well as perforation corrosion. If you look at the world corrosion map, and in that case, we should, and I will concentrate only on India. So here, if you look at the portion out here, sorry, I can't. Okay, I can do that. So India comes, several parts of India come under severe and some of them extremely severe. And if I quickly jump onto the Indian corrosion map, which was also shown yesterday also, you look, what is the length of the Indian coastline? I think Wikipedia tells me it's about 7,517 kilometers. And across there, you have almost about 54 cities where you have the problem of corrosion. And this presents a very important opportunity for everyone to use galvanized steels for automotive. Refer to one of the Swedish Corrosion Institute was instrumental in doing the first analysis and really pointing out how much of coating in the coated steel should be there for what purpose. And if you look at the door, the front door, inner and outer, is perhaps the most affected, because what happens is there's a lot of water which goes into the hem flanges and there's a lot of corrosion. So if you go to Mumbai or any other coastal city, the first place of corrosion in a car is the front door, and the bottom side of the front door is always corroded. So what they said was, this is the comparison, that if you use 7 to 10 microns of zinc, then after 11 years of service, you can still get a very good life and there will be practically no perforation corrosion. So this was one of the first work which was done by the Swedish Institute. Based on that, there was a lot of improvements in the Europe and US. People have, yes, talked about corrosion warranties. There are corrosion warranties in place. For example, it's very common to give a 2, 6, 12 corrosion warranty. The 2 is for engine corrosion, 6 is for cosmetic corrosion, and 12 years is for perforation corrosion. So elsewhere in the world, you look at Toyota, look at Honda, look at all the cars, and it is it's really not even a marketing stroke now. It has become a necessity that you need to give this 12 years of perforation corrosion warranty. Unfortunately, in India, there are no such legislations, and in India, for the local cars, that's what I was telling Stefan, that Volkswagen is the only one which is giving a 90% coated body. The rest of the people are have started using coated steels, but only for the parts where there has been a problem of corrosion, like the Toyota Innova, like the Hyundai Santro. Whenever they found that there were a lot of complaints, they have changed those parts to coated steels. So, they are typically identified some parts where you are likely to get a customer complaint, and just to take care of that, they have, so it's sort of a bare minimum. So if I have to rattle out some numbers, my own understanding is that about 7% of all the steels which is used in India for cars is galvanized, and I'm talking of only domestic, I'm not talking of the export market. And really, if I look at the bill of materials, because we work very closely with the automotive people, if I look at the bill of materials of the upcoming cars, I see that in next 3 years, it is going to 15%, which is quite a big jump, because in 2002, it was about 1.5%. It's become 7 to 8%, going to 15%. And then when I look at the bill of materials for the next platforms, it will very quickly jump to 20%. So all this is good news, and all this is actually on the designer's table. So we will see a lot of usage of coated steels in automotive. Of course, we still don't have any warranties in place. I see Volkswagen putting up a marketing advertisement saying that 6 years of perforation corrosion. They're being very conservative, because we do supply to Volkswagen, and we know that that car will easily could qualify for a 12-year corrosion warranty. But I don't know, they are being very conservative on the front. Moving on, Okay. Now, once you get into the coated automotive, there is always the very big debate about galvanized or galvannealed. Look, the entire world is divided. North America is about 50% of galvannealed and galvanized. Europe, a very big chunk of GI is being used. Only the Japanese transplants and the Korean transplants use galvannealed in Europe. South Korea and Japan, there is no question of using any GI. Everybody is using GA. Now, of course, with the Renault-Nissan partnership, Nissan has also is about thinking of doing something in GI, and there is a little bit of a problem of adhesive bonding. In India, of course, it is driven by the Japanese and the Korean transplants, and also Tata Motors. You'd be very surprised that Tata Steel has been supplying skin panels to Tata Motors from 2006 for Safari. So look at the Safari, the entire Safari is a galvanized body. Unfortunately, it doesn't sell so much. It's a good car, it's a good SUV, but Tata Motors that way has also taken some steps to move in this direction. So the entire automotive world is divided between whether to use GI or whether to use GA. India has gone more the GA way. Volkswagen, of course, a European car manufacturer, puts only GI, and Ford is for the Sanand plant is going to move to a little bit into GI. But the entire market of automotive coated products is GA. So what is this GI and GA? Now, galvanized is zero spangled, and it is like having a thin layer of Fe2Al5 in between the iron and the zinc, and typically flat, shiny, and in these galvanizing bath you would have a higher percentage of aluminium. Galvannealed is rough, grey, dull, with an aluminium content of less than 0.14, and I will talk about the microstructure of galvannealed. It's very interesting. Galvannealed as a product is more difficult to manufacture than galvanized, but the Japanese and the Koreans, essentially the Japanese, they have mastered the art of making galvannealed. This is the structure of GA. I refer galvannealed as GA. Look into the optical microscope with the etching. You see steel, and then there is this layer which is next to steel, which is the gamma layer. Then you have the delta layer and you have the zeta layer. Of course, you don't have any eta layer because eta is 100% GI. Now, this is, so the whole thing is how to manipulate and consistently get what you want. So, as I mentioned, it is a little bit difficult to manufacture GA, but we, for example, in Tata Steel, we have been supplying GA for a long time now, and we seem to know what to do. In advantages of GA over GI is that it's a harder coating, so there is no stick slip phenomena in pressing. You have better paint adhesion, and most important thing is, since it has 10% iron in the coating, it is more weldable than GI. In galvanized, it is very difficult to weld. You need special transformers, you need special welding equipment. By the way, any car has about 3,000 to 4,000 spot welds. So spot welding is a very important thing. More important is to understand about what are the disadvantages of GA. One of them is cratering for ED paint. I will explain what that thing is. And the other phenomena is called powdering and flaking. So what are these powdering and flaking? If I explain to you in simple terms, powdering is loss of small particles from the coating in compressive forces. Under compressive forces, you will have some small particles coming out, whereas flaking is the complete delamination of the coating. So the automaker will not like any of this, because both these defects will give some dust pollution in press forming, especially for skin panels or outer panels. There will be very small dents which are created because of this powder being taken out from the coating. But of course, there are measures in place, and we as coating manufacturers, we are able to control them. If somebody says that galvannealed without powdering and flaking, then he's telling fairy tales. There will be some amount of powdering, there should not be any amount of flaking, and we have to work very closely with the automakers to explain to them how to take care of this defect. Because of course, GA has certain advantages over GI, and that's how it is being used in India. You look at the process parameters in the galvanizing line and of course the upstream lines, like for example the steel chemistry. if you use titanium in steel, it will powder more. You put a little bit of niobium, you're okay. The line speed plays a very important part. The galvannealing electrical power, the coating weight, as the coating weight increases, the tendency for powdering increases. Percentage aluminum in the bath. If the aluminum is closer to 0.135%, you have less powdering. If you go beyond, or if you go less than that, you have more powdering. The heating rate. So all this, when I'm discussing these process parameters, essentially there is a compromise. And I've taken this slide from my Arcelor friends. There are three types of galvannealed which can be produced. It's either under alloyed, over alloyed, or just about rightly alloyed. Now, the whole thing is that the gamma layer, the layer just close next to the substrate, needs to be as thin as possible, and we need a very small, let's say about 5% of zeta. If you have that type of a structure you can get consistently in the coating, then yes, then you have nailed it. You can produce a galvannealed which can be used for skin panels, and it is being used for skin panels in India. And this is possible by all those process parameters which I talked about. So it's possible to get out of flaking completely, minimal powdering, and then get that advantage to the customer so that he is comfortable in pressing or phosphating or painting it. There are some recommendations also for GA which are quite different from the cold rolled material which is used. For example, since it is a hard coating, the radii or the radius of curvature should be typically less than 3 of the thicknesses. This is the reason why, because if you have very, very small radii, then there will be more powder generation. And this powder generation will lead to pimples or dents. So what we always recommend is that the automakers use blank